Okay, here what I'm going to do is I'm going to, this is an exercise sometimes we do as a discussion in my in real life classes, but for these purposes I'll do it just as a presentation. And then we're going to have a series of paragraphs. I'm going to read the paragraph to you, and I'm going to show you how this API thing is working, how one part of the paragraph is the issue, and the next part is the discussion, okay? And so these are some paragraphs that I've written. They're a little on the long side. The paragraphs I write tend to be on the long side. So I do what I say, not what I do. That's an example there. Don't write your paragraphs too long. But I think there can be useful examples. Okay, here's a paragraph. Okay. This is about the movie Blazing Saddles, a very funny comedy movie from the early 70s. Not only is the racial content in Blazing Saddles highly innovative, but the racial makeup of the movie's production team was also groundbreaking. Though most of the writers in the film were white, the one black presence on the writing team, the comedian Richard Pryor, had a crucial role in the development of the film, with his involvement bringing an authentic black perspective into the movie. At the time the film was written, Pryor was a star comedian known for his bold use of racial themes and profanity in his act. With a series of best-selling comedy albums, Pryor gained a reputation for bringing an unflinching and aggressive black perspective on race issues into the mainstream culture. The presence of Pryor's perspective is obvious in many parts of the movie, especially in the suave confidence of the protagonist, the black sheriff, Bart. Interestingly, Pryor was also responsible for some of the non-racial humor in the film as well, such as the famous farting around the campfire scene. In fact, Pryor was supposed to play the part of the sheriff, but the studio was afraid that his wild personal habits, in particular his drug use, would put the production at risk should he become incapacitated, and insisted that Cleavon Little be cast for the part instead. Okay, so that's a nice long paragraph. Now the question here is, where does the issue part of the paragraph end and the discussion part start? Okay, so you take a look at that, maybe think of a possible answer, and here's my answer. Okay, so the issue part here is, not only is the racial content of Blazing Saddles highly innovative, but the racial makeup of the movie's production team was also groundbreaking. There's a transition sentence from the previous paragraph into this paragraph. Though most of the writers of the film were white, the one black presence on the writing team, the comedian Richard Pryor, had a crucial role in the development of the film, with his involvement bringing an authentic black perspective into the movie. Okay, that second sentence there, notice that the idea of Richard Pryor's importance to the film is brought into the paragraph. And notice that the rest of the paragraph, every sentence in the rest of the paragraph, is going to be talking about Richard Pryor and his contribution to the movie. So it's with that second sentence that the issue, the Pryor is the issue, is the main point of this paragraph, and it's with that second sentence there that issue is announced. And so it's at the end of the second sentence there that the issue portion of this paragraph ends. And again, that thing I said about focus, notice how the rest of the paragraph is focused on the idea that is brought out in that second sentence. Okay, here's our next paragraph. Ooh, big long one. Another important difference between The Hobbit and the previous Lord of the Rings movies is, ironically, one of the similarities this new movie has with the older ones. Okay, this is an older writing thing. Okay, sorry. Just as The Lord of the Rings was a film trilogy, The Hobbit will eventually be a trio of movies. The difference lies in the fact that while Lord of the Rings was based on a book trilogy, The Hobbit was based on a single book, a book that was shorter than any of the individual books in the Lord of the Rings series. There are multiple reasons why the single book, The Hobbit, has been stretched out and supplemented into 3 films. As Harry Plinkett reports, the director Peter Jackson originally intended for The Hobbit to be broken up into 2 movies, but the studio, asked him to make it into 3. The studio seemed to be thinking that 3 films would take in more money than 2, and at the same time would come in for less in total production costs than 3 separate similar mega productions would. Plinkett goes on to speculate that Jackson might have personal reasons for stretching things out. Based on how Jackson has expressed his fascination and devotion to the world of J.R.R. Tolkien's books, it could be that the time he spends making these movies are for him like a journey to Middle-earth, a chance to temporarily live in this magical and fictional kingdom. Knowing that there are no more filmable Tolkien series after The Hobbit is finished, Jackson could be wishing to prolong the personally satisfying experience that making these movies has been for him. Okay, so again, as you were listening through that, and you take a look at this, can you think of where the issue portion of this paragraph stops and the discussion portion ends? Okay, I'll just hesitate for a moment, and then I will give you my answer here. Okay, all right. So if you see that, if we think back to that graphic for the API paragraph, the paragraph begins with a transition phrase or statement. And we see there another important difference between The Hobbit and the previous Lord of the Rings movies. So we have our sense that the previous paragraphs have been talking about. I'm recording a video right now. Oh, do you want me to call you? Yes, I will. I will. Thank you. Sorry about that. The security guard came in the room. Sorry about that. Okay, so we have the paragraphs beginning with the transition phrase. Okay, so something the previous paragraph was talking about a difference between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. But notice then the second sentence is talking about similarities between and so there's this idea of similarities and differences between the two. The second sentence brings out the idea that the difference is that Lord of the Rings was 3 books made into 3 movies. The Hobbit is 1 book made into 3 movies. But that third sentence there is the one where the main idea for the paragraph comes out. It says, there are multiple reasons why the single book, The Hobbit, has been stretched out and supplemented into 3 films. And notice the whole rest of the paragraph is just presenting those multiple reasons, okay? That is an umbrella sentence there, that there are multiple reasons why the single book, The Hobbit, has been stretched out and supplemented into 3 films. That's an umbrella that covers the whole rest of the paragraph. And also another a good point here, the example that this paragraph is showing you, is notice how certain opinions are being brought into the discussion portion there, like the idea that the speculation that Peter Jackson is doing this fantasy wish fulfillment thing with these movies. Now, if you had that as your idea in an argument, you'd have to back that up with evidence, okay? But in this case, though, that opinion is being presented as factual evidence because what's being reported is that it is someone else's opinion, this Harry Plinkett guy. It is an objective fact that Harry Plinkett has this opinion about Peter Jackson. And so that's how an opinion, through the use of secondary sources, an opinion can become a piece of factual evidence in your argument. Okay, and the final example here, maybe a longer paragraph than any of the ones before it. Okay, and so, okay, let me read it. Anyone wanting to evaluate the place of David Cameron's Titanic in film history must account for the remarkable similarities between his film and an earlier film, A Night to Remember, though they should also acknowledge that there are legitimate reasons for most of these similarities. Okay, now, if you want to pause the playback at this point, you can read the rest of the paragraph, but I'm going to sort of cut to the chase because I think this video is going on long enough. Notice that that sentence there says that there are similarities between the 2 movies, but there are also legitimate reasons for the 2 movies, for these similarities, okay? And that, if you read through the whole paragraph, you'll see how that is here's a 1-sentence issue, okay? That's a thesis sentence for the whole paragraph. So there's an example of how you can do the first sentence of the paragraph can be the whole issue. It can present the thesis sentence. And if you read through the rest of this paragraph, you'll see that everything in this paragraph is either identifying a similarity between the two movies or justifying the similarity between the two movies. Just as this thesis sentence says those are two things that should be done, the whole rest of the paragraph spends its time focused on those two things. Okay, so those are some examples of what API paragraphs look like. Again, if you have any questions on this, please message me through the Canvas, and I'll be glad to respond. Also, especially if you have any questions on how, if on the notes, the comments on your draft, if I've talked about you needing to have a thesis sentence, you needing to move a thesis sentence up into the beginning of the paragraph, this is exactly this API idea that I've got here, that I'm demonstrating to you here. If you have any questions on how these ideas specifically apply to your draft, definitely message me and I can give you some extra explanation.